I'm Senator Shelley Moore Capito, and this is the Elephant in the Room podcast.
Welcome to the Elephant in the Room. I'm your host, Cyrus Pearson, joined as always by my co-host, Christy Lewis. Hi, Christy.
Hey, Cyrus.
I was doing some research for our show today involving U.S. Senator Shelley Moore Capito from West Virginia, and I'd like to ask you some questions here.
All right.
Let's see how swift you are. Guess which state the Golden Delicious apple originated in?
Probably West Virginia.
You're good. You're good, Christy. Okay. This state's Capitol dome at 292 feet is higher than the dome at the nation's capital. What state do you think it is?
Is it West Virginia?
Okay. Last one. The first brick street in the world was laid in this state. Any idea? It's okay to admit you don't know.
Is it West Virginia?
Okay, I'm done. Let's just get on to the interview. Senator, does West Virginia have the best state song out there, period?
We do, thanks to John Denver.
John Denver, Take Me Home Country Roads.
Take Me Home Country Roads. And John Denver came to the West Virginia Mountaineer Stadium in the 80s and sang that live in front of all the students. It was packed, tens of thousands of people there. You can see it on YouTube. It was a very special day. But the funny thing about that song, apparently you can hear it in Copenhagen, you can hear it in Berlin. All sorts of musical acts around the world will be playing Take Me Home. So I think they mean it. They want to come to West Virginia.
And you get a bunch of buzzed people in a bar, and that goes on the jukebox. You're in for a good time, Christy. I'm telling you. I've seen it firsthand.
It's true. And you know what? Here's another fun fact. At the end of the West Virginia University football games, instead of tearing down the goalposts, everybody stays in the stands and they sing Take Me Home Country Roads. And it's a good way to sort of cool the temperature, whether people are mad or happy.
Let's talk about something that I don't think anybody would guess. And when we had John Barrasso, our chairman, on, he said he was looking forward to all the unique perspectives and interesting things that our members were bringing to our party. You have a bachelor's degree in something, zoology.
Zoology, I went to Duke. Zoology was the biology major, basically. I was pre-med, and I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and so this was the best course, and it was zoology. I'm not naturally attached to animals in a zoo, although I like elephants, don't get me wrong. And I followed through. My last year in college, I decided to make a change, but I didn't change my major. So I say it prepares me to work in the biggest zoo in America, Washington, D.C. It always gets a good laugh.
You and Christy actually have that in common.
That's what I wanted to do when I grew up, was be a zoologist. I used to rip out the pages of National Geographic and put them on my door and tell anyone who came in the house that this is what we had to save. So that was.
So tell me, did you major in zoology?
No, I did not. Instead, I majored in communications and got
We
a lot
should
of degree.
trade.
Yeah.
We'll get back to how zoology led to becoming U.S. Senator in a little while here, but let's talk about one of your passions. You're actually a runner.
I am.
Did you get into that in an early age?
You know, as a young girl, I was always very athletic. And, remember, this is 50s and 60s when you didn't have organized teams in the schools too much for the girls. But I have an older brother, and he taught me how to throw the football, hit the baseball, shoot free throws, and I was fast. I was a fast runner. And so I took all of that through my years. I did play in high school. I played tennis in college, and but I've always loved sports. And I found, for a lot of different reasons, I started out walking, and I had a good friend, and we'd walk and talk. And then it just sort of morphed into running. We have a lot of hills in West Virginia, so I started running on the flat, then I started running on the hills. And so now, actually, I didn't run this morning because I had to get up very early, but I did run yesterday. I've had an injury for about 8 months, but I'm over it now. And so I'm hoping to run a 5K, I think, in May.
Okay.
So I'm ready.
Common runner's injury?
It was the Achilles. I think I strained it. And honestly, I think it was my shoes. I won't say what brand I was wearing at the time.
Very important.
Because I finally dawned on me to change my shoes, and then it started getting better. Because I went to PT and all that stuff, and I thought, well, maybe age-wise I can't really heal this. but I think I did.
So you're a distance runner? Do you run marathons? Do you run
I've run
sprints?
I ran the New York City half marathon with my daughter.
Wow.
And she was the one huffing, not me. We laugh about that now. And then I was determined to run a marathon. So I ran the Marine Marathon in 2019. I improperly trained for that. In other words, I didn't train enough.
Okay.
And I didn't, I took one long run, but for me, that was 15 to 18. You're supposed to do more than that. And I had hurt myself in the training. This was my knee. I'd never had knee problems. And I talked to Dr. Barrasso,
Yes.
and I said, this marathon's in 3 weeks. I've got this knee issue where I'm not running anymore. I quit running 3 weeks before I was walking, but 3 weeks before the marathon. What do you think? And he goes, well, if you think you can get through it, go ahead and do it. Oh, my gosh, by about the 19th mile. So if you saw my time, you can definitely see I walked it in. And I was so worried I was going to get cut off because, the slow walkers, the slow runners, they cut off. But I wasn't close to that, but I was so sore the next day.
But you
I'd like to
finished.
try it again. I finished. Yeah, and I'd like to try it again. My older son says, please don't.
Well, for people who have never attempted this is physically taxing. I mean,
It
you
is.
get near the end and you see people just falling down. They're down on the street or the
It was
grass.
an interesting day because it happened to the day where it started really cold rain at 40 degrees. So you're sort of bundled up. And then at typical Washington day, it was October, it got almost up to the 80s. So you're taking clothes off, your shoes are soggy. I was in the medical tent at one point going, does anybody have any Tylenol? and so, which they do. And so I'm proud of the fact that I finished. The competitor in me wants to cut that time significantly,
Oh,
but
well,
I'm not sure
you know.
I'm going to do it. I
Well,
don't
Senator
know.
Grassley ran for a long, long
I know.
time.
I still run, but it's usually about 3 to 4 miles.
Now, there's a lot of other things to keep active with in West Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
if we can kind of turn towards that. Whitewater rafting is huge. You've got
It is.
fishing. You've got golfing. I think it might be one of the most underrated states when
It
I
is.
started researching it. Stargazing. I'd actually love for you to tell
Mm-hmm.
me what it's like at night there looking up in the sky.
We actually have one spot in Calhoun County that is considered the darkest spot on the east coast in terms of any kind of external lights. And so they've sort of made they have a satellite there, a telescope.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a tourist attraction. You have to reserve
Wow.
it, and you can go and stargaze. I don't happen to know much about stargazing, but I know that some portions of our state are really good for it because we don't have the development. That's a negative in some ways, but in other ways, we also don't have we have a quiet zone in West Virginia where you can't fly over. That's over in more on the eastern portion of the state because there's some intelligence
Oh.
assets over there, and so you're not permitted to have communications or fly through there. So that's very dark as well.
Now, tourism is big or should be
big.
big because I was looking at these 20 facts about West Virginia, and I'm just obsessed with them. But it says West Virginia is located within a day's drive from 75% of the U.S. population.
COVID was really good for us in this aspect, especially being in the Washington, Baltimore area. We had a lot of people. I mean, daily I had people coming up to me all the time saying, we went to West Virginia, we rented a cabin on the river. We went to Snowshoe or Canaan Valley to ski. We went down the New River Gorge. We created a New River Gorge National Park and Preserve, but the New River is the second oldest river in the world. It has some of the best rapids on the East Coast. We also have the Gauley River for rapids. We have great fishing, very clear and clean streams. We have some of the most ancient, if you're into botany and stuff, plants. We also have great mountain biking, golf courses. We have a lot. I love to play golf, and I do. And so we've got a little bit of everything. But what's nice is we've learned through COVID with all of the people that are now able to work from home, that we've started a program that tries to draw younger people back into the state, and they sort of slant it as a tech and rec, because they want to be outside. They want to be biking, hiking, and we have great rock climbing in the national park. So there's something for everybody.
Let's get back to how you became a zoologist and then later became a senator. And I do want to preface this. I asked the coworker about West Virginia being Republican or Democrat. And for some people out there, it's a Republican state, but you are actually the first Republican to win a full term in the Senate from West Virginia since 1942.
Right. Right. In 2000, I ran for the House of Representatives. And, I was raised in a political family. My father was a Republican former governor, so I had a lot of experience kind of going to all the Lincoln Day dinners and the parades and all that, standing up on the stage with him. And I must have really liked it because I started doing it to my kids. But and so in 2000, things really began to change. And I was elected for the first time to the House, first Republican that had served more than one term since my father in the 50s. And so I worked hard to say, look, the Republican values that we have much more aligned with West Virginia's thoughts and where their aspirations are for their families. And we worked that very, very hard. Eventually, we got another member of Congress in 2010, and then in 2014 I was elected to the Senate, the first senator since the 50s, but the first one to serve for a full term, I guess, since 42. I didn't actually realize that. And then we now have everybody who's a Republican with one exception. And our governor, all of our board of public works, our legislature has a supermajority. It's just totally flipped.
Why do you think the people have come to recognize that's the way to go?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier. I think it's our message and our messengers. I think we had new, interesting ideas when we started. The state had been traditionally Democrat in a sort of a Southern Democrat way, where it was we have a lot of unions, a lot of union influence at the time, very heavily ingrained in the Democrat Party. And I think when people's ability to look at news and not just the newsletter from the union, they realized that the National Democrat Party had moved far away from the aspirations of our families in West Virginia, whether that be our constitutional rights, whether that be our environmental perspectives. Keep in mind, we're a huge energy state. We have a lot of coal and natural gas. And honestly, when Al Gore ran in 2000, it was the first time a Republican non-incumbent, so that would be George Bush, won since, I believe, 1928.
Wow.
So he really set the stage there, and I think in some ways he probably pulled me in with him because I only won by a very small margin. And since then, we've just built on it. And I think it's talking about the legislature just passed tax relief for the first time in a long time. And I think it's just a better response to what people really want and really want to talk about. And the Republican Party represents that. And I'm glad to be the head of it for my state.
So when you decided, so my understanding is you had been a career counselor before you entered politics. But when you decided, I'm going to run for office and go into the, was there someone who was a mentor to you or helped you sort of navigate that process? I imagine it'd be daunting, and it's a very male-dominated field. So I'm curious as to how you.
Well, what happened there was I was a career counselor for 5 or 6 years, and I married young, and we started having children younger, and I finally decided, and I was able to stay home with the children, and I did for 15 years. And I started looking around then. Our daughter, I believe, was in 4th or 5th grade, and she's the youngest, and I started thinking, where am I going to go from here? And I was always interested in public service. I look back on the choices that I made on my education and other thing. I don't know why I didn't try to go to law school and major in political science, because that was really the thing that got me juiced up. I liked the most. But the science background is very useful in every aspects of your life. So I decided, I talked to a couple friends in and around, I called them my bleacher buddies, because at that point our kids are playing all kinds of sports, and I'm sitting on the bleachers with my buddies, and we're talking about what we want to do. And in those conversations you hear, I can't take care of my parents. Can you believe the legislature's doing this? We need to start thinking about this in West Virginia. You get all kinds of good ideas. And so I started thinking about running for local office. And I met a friend in the grocery store, just happen chance, and I said to her, I'm really thinking about running for the House of Delegates. And she said, you've been talking about this for years. Why don't you just do it? It was that plain. Mary. That was my friend Mary. And I went, wow, I didn't realize I'd been talking about it. And so I think you always hear that women have to be asked to run and men just decide, I'm going to run. And in this case, since I'd had such a background in political life, I had all of the the confidence in terms of how to run a campaign or how to deflect negativity. I'm lucky. I was lucky there. I wasn't coming in as a total newbie, not realizing the pitfalls. My dad was obviously, and my mother, very influential here, and my husband's been a great help as well.
Let's tie that into March being Women's History Month,
Yeah.
and this interview actually taking place on International Women's Day. You are the first woman elected to the U.S. Senate from West Virginia, and some states still haven't elected a female senator. What's your views on that?
I am really proud of our state that we're out of the category where we've never had a woman elected to the Senate. I think that a lot of people think I was the first congresswoman from the state. I actually was not. Elizabeth Key's husband was in. This is how people used to get in, women used to get in. Her husband was in. She ran and served, but she ran for re-election 3 or 4 times, I think, in southern West Virginia. So she's the pioneer there. And then so I was the second woman from the House. I had the question early on, well, is it different running as a woman? How difficult is it? I'm the kind of person that focuses on the positive. I can walk in a room in a red jacket and stand out right away. Some guy walks in a red jacket, they think he's the circus barker or something. So I see it as an advantage. I think I've always talked from my heart, and I have the experience of raising children, caring for parents, going to the grocery store, all of the things that people see every day and that women do. And I think women understand that you can't sit around and putz around on an issue for a month. You've got to do the laundry, make the meals, cart the kids around, try to keep a house halfway decent, help your husband, have him help you. There's just so much coming at, I think, women. And I think even now more, I see this in my sons, more with men too, more child care for the men and all of that than when certainly my husband and I were raising our children. And so I see it's a total advantage to be a woman. And if you ask the men, they don't want to run against women.
Yeah.
Because of the, I think, the powerful voice that we can bring. So I never really focused on it. I said, I'm not a man running in a skirt. I'm a woman, and I'm going to stay that way and present my issues from my lens. And I guess being the authentic you is what voters really want to see.
Authenticity. I think that's all people are asking for. Let's talk about one of your passions, the program Girls Rise Up. Can you talk about that a little?
Sure. Yeah, I love that program, and it's actually my creation myself.
Really?
Yes. I in having a father is very prominent. I would be going to different meetings in West Virginia, and people would come up to me all the time. Oh, when your dad was in Congress, he helped me with an immigration issue. Oh, when your dad was in Congress, he got lights on the baseball field. Oh, when your dad was in Congress, he came over to our house after my mother died. I mean, just the one-on-one influences that he was able to have, and it really hit me more with the guys that were county commissioners. Oh, I saw your daddy spoke at Boy State, and I thought, wow, that's cool. And I thought to myself, what do I want my daughter to hear? What would I want her to hear? And what I want her to hear is a young lady who's now 25 years old, who's starting her own business, and said, yeah, I met your mom when I was in 5th grade, and she told me I could do anything I want to do. So I started this program called West Virginia Girls Rise Up. I personally picked 5th grade because if you've had girls and young girls, you get to middle school, they don't talk anymore.
Uh-oh, I have a 4-year-old.
Yeah, get ready. And in 5th grade, they're still talking, and that's the end of our elementary school, so it was a good break there. And I also said I don't want to go to the schools that always get the visitors. I want to go someplace where you don't see.
Okay.
And so I started going. I think we've done 27 of these. Then I started bringing famous women with me. We brought Peggy Whitson. She's the most decorated NASA astronaut in terms of her spacewalks, and she was really cool. She had her NASA uniform on, and just to see that is.
I bet they love that.
Oh, they love that. And then I had Nikki Haley, and I had Shannon Bream, and most recently, we had the gymnastics team. We had a fire chief. I had Carol Miller, who's a congresswoman over in Huntington. And just most recently, I had Dana Perino came into Morgantown, and we did one. And she did a little thing on her show on it. She loved it. And she is an authentic person. She's very relatable to every young girl in that room. And one thing she said to me that sort of reinforces West Virginia Girls Rise Up is, if you can see me, you can be me. And if you can see her, a West Virginia press secretary, you probably think this, if you can see me, a United States Senator, you can be me. And so I just have three stools: education, physical fitness, and health, because that's very important to me. And then the hardest one is the confidence issue. But get the girls I talk about when I was a young girl. Believe it or not, I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to talk in class. I have report cards that say she never says anything. And now I make my living
no,
talking.
I would not have thought that at all.
I know. I wouldn't either. But apparently that's the way I was. And so I tell these girls, I had things that I didn't like. I was afraid of horses. I didn't want to, do this and that. And they have their own fears, but, you just keep plugging away at it. So that's what we've done, and I hope we're making an impact. And I hope my daughter gets approached someday.
Yeah. Do you have any idea why that is? Because it seems like I have a 4-year-old girl and a 16-month-old boy. She's in class, and the girls are the outgoing ones.
It starts out like that.
And
That's
then
what I've learned.
At some point, it just turns.
It does start out like that. I think our brains develop differently. I mean, I'm not a scientist on this
Right.
at all.
Yeah.
But I think what I observe is the girls start out much faster, quicker. I can see this in my grandchildren, quite frankly, and they're more verbal. And then it starts to kind of even out a little bit as your brains develop maybe more mathematical skills, and then and that's where the guys kind of kick in. And so I think it's, there's all kinds of studies on it, but I think I talked to a CEO of a major firm who's a woman in the STEM professions, and she said they've done a lot of work on this because they're trying to get more women in STEM professions. And why are they tailing off once they get to college?
But the girls rise up helps with the confidence.
Yeah.
And what's the response from the students themselves?
Oh, they love it. And at the end, they write an aspiration as to how they're going to change their life. I tell them they don't have to, go write a novel. Just say you're going to walk the dog with your mother. That's exercise in one of these sort of areas. And then we yell and scream, West Virginia girls rise up. And I tell them to put their aspiration in the desk and look at it every now and then. And I told him I was going to do jumping jacks. Now, I'll have to say I haven't. But
Are you going to train for that?
Yeah, I'm going to train for that. And so that's how we end it. And hopefully they get the message that they've seen somebody who's done well and can do well. I did find that, being an older person, if I bring a younger person in, with me, like the West Virginia University gymnastics team or something, they really relate to the just a little bit older than, they're cool. I'm not sure I'm still in the cool category.
I'm not sure you're older. I think we're starting to let that word be too pervasive in our society.
That's probably true. Ageism, that's what it's called.
Last thing I'll tie into Women's History Month. Just in your experience over your lifetime, how far do you think women have come? And feel free to answer this honestly. And I will go with, we talked about states that had never elected a woman as a U.S. Senator. According to various sources on the internet, in 2016 it was 22 states. 2018 it was 20 states. 2022 it's 17 states. So even in the last few years, we're seeing things change.
Well, I definitely see that in the Congress. When I first came, I believe there were 58 women on the House side. There's close to 120 now,
Wow.
I think. Here in the Senate, what was that book they wrote? 9 and Counting in the 90s. We're up to, I think, 26, 27. So it's a gradual progression. You're seeing more. I think we need to have more women in leadership. I'm glad I'm in leadership, but I mean in leadership, chairing committees, which we're seeing over on the House side. We see that. And so another interesting statistic of the women that are serving that's different than when I came. When I came as one of the 53 women, or 58, I think I said 58 women, only 7 of us had children under the age of 18. So you look at a Nancy Pelosi, for instance, she started when her kids were, older. Now you're seeing Kathy McMorris Rogers have 3 children. Kirsten Gillibrand has had 2. Tammy Duckworth has had 2. So it's not like, whoa, somebody's pregnant. It's like, well, this is life, and you can do it. I think it's
a lot of
difficult,
work.
but
It is a lot of
It's a
work.
lot of
Difficult's
work.
an understatement there.
Well, the schedule doesn't lend itself to sitting around the dinner table having, meatloaf and potatoes. But,
right.
but, most families aren't like that anyway. No.
So there's, based on what you were just talking about with Girls Rise Up and the 3 parts of that focus, right? I think you said confidence, what was it? Education
and health and well-being.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I track polling and things that are happening outside of here, And a rising concern for parents, their number one concern is their kids' mental health. And for teen
Yeah.
girls, there's that new study from the CDC that shows half of girls are saying that their mental health is bad, that they have bad anxiety, that they have feelings of sadness. There's a worry about girls specifically being depressed. You did a piece of legislation, I believe it was last year to this end. Let's see, I think I have the name written down some here. But it goes after tech companies were sort of glorifying eating disorders, and you went
right.
after that. It was a bipartisan bill that you were on. And so the way you've sort of keyed into that issue, which is a huge issue for parents these days, was that informed by some of the things that you were seeing through Girls Rise Up? Was it things that you were hearing from constituents or in committee?
Well, on the eating disorder issue, which is so tied to mental health, I had friends who had daughters who, beginning in middle school, begin this long journey of anorexia and bulimia, to the point of, hospitalization, some of them.
That's awful.
So I sort of got into that issue as I don't want to say niche, because I thought it was smaller, but it's really not as small as you think. And then now you have the question of whether some of these internet, what do you say, grooming, to say it's okay to weigh 105 pounds and be 5'10". It's okay to cut. It's okay to
Right.
do. And when did this become okay? And so I think that you can get the reinforcement from external forces that really you didn't have before. And it's all tied into mental health. I think the lack of the social interaction for young girls, and I'm sure it's the same for boys, but young girls at that age is, you hear about cliques and
Right.
but we like to have a group of friends. It's a safety thing for me. I mean, I can remember myself having, my best friends were the ones I played on the team with, and
Right.
I can see this through my own children and my grandchildren. And so when you get that taken away, like you did during COVID, it just undermines your confidence. And so I've worked with Klobuchar on the. She had an issue with her constituent. Hers was constituent-driven, Anna Weston, who tried to get help through her parents' insurance, and the insurance denied because they said it's mental health, it's not physical health, and she ended up dying. And so you see that. I've talked to people and young people who have had not just daughters, but the girls themselves who have been in and out of treatment. It's a devastating, that is a devastating issue. And then we also converted that issue into helping veterans with eating disorders. And it's not necessarily that you're anorexic. You could be way overeating, and it's the same kind of pathologies.
That was the bill I was thinking of, the Anna Weston Legacy Act that was
Yes.
signed into law last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that affects the families deeply too, not just the person going through
Oh,
it.
it impacts siblings and the parents. You can imagine every day, if you're going to watch to see if your child, are they going to take a bite of this grilled cheese or not? And or are they putting it in their napkin, or are they getting up and going to the bathroom frequently? I mean, there's all kinds of things, but I think it's important that we do this. Yeah.
On a little more positive note, one thing I'm hearing a lot is bipartisanship, and that's something that has been criticized as not being up here, and when you look at polls, that's what people are saying they want more of. You're doing bipartisanship.
I do. It goes back to my roots in the West Virginia legislature in 1996 when I was elected. Believe it or not, there were only 22 Republicans out of 100. So I realized quickly on that if I was going to have any kind of impacts, I've got to work with the other side. And so what you do is you find people that are either like issues or in your region, or people that you just sort of like. And so we worked on a couple things. Children's health insurance would be one. School safety was another one we worked on. And then some road safety issues. So I learned then that, just because you're, got a different jersey on doesn't mean you can't play on the same field on the same team. And so, I think it's about finding issues where we have consensus that something needs to be done. Personally, I'd rather be doing something. There's some people I think that we serve with that don't want to do anything. Personally, I came here to do things. And so I'd rather I'm willing to give up some things to get things done. And you just find, like me, like Klobuchar and I have worked. We were actually at the kickoff for International Women's Day this morning and talking about the National Women's Museum. So I've done some things with her. I've done a lot of things with a lot of different people. And, I think people want to see that you're working and that you're effective. And sometimes you can't be effective if you're not talking to the other side.
I love your sports analogy, by the way, and I just want to, it triggered this question. I feel like you learn a lot from sports when it comes to working successfully in a society, and
Right.
you've done a lot of sports.
I have.
Do you think that has taught you something
Yes.
about being successful?
Yes. Yes. It definitely fuels your competitive fire, that's for sure. And I think I was probably born with that. And actually, most people think it's from my dad, but it's actually from my mother, so competitive. And but I think also it teaches you how to lose. And
Yes.
you have to learn to lose. And it teaches you how to, if you're in a bad spot, to rely on a partner. I played a lot of tennis when I was.
That's why I like playing singles.
Yeah. Oh no, that's
can
why I
only
like playing
blame
doubles.
me.
You
Oh,
got to
'cause
get
you
a
can
good
play-
doubles partner.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, and so if you have a good partner or a good team or somebody better who's playing better at the time, that's who you go with. And I would say, if we look back on and I look back on this a lot, on the infrastructure negotiations that went on with President Biden, I started that, and I started it with a team, with the president, and I realized that the team that I had and me, we weren't going to get it all the way across the line. And as much as I hated to say, okay, I'm going to give it to the next team to take on, and that's what we did, but we got to a success. So I own that success myself because I got it to the 10-yard line, and then some others carried it over with our help. So I just realized that, yeah, I love sports. I mean, I watch basketball. Our kids were really good at sports, watched a lot ourselves, and just have so, the agony of defeat. I ask our new members, what pushes you more, the agony of defeat or the taste of victory? And only one person said victory. Everybody else says it's the agony of defeat that drives you, because you hate to lose, but you learn so much when you do.
I think you're absolutely right. We have to wrap up. I do want to hit one more issue
Okay.
that's important to you, Capito Connect. Can you tell me about what that is
yeah.
and what the challenges are, if you could do that sort
There
of quickly?
again, that's an internet, and that was when I came in 2014 in the Senate. I realized when traveling the state, the gaps, huge gaps. And you talked about how close we are to D.C. and how close we are to the population. Really big gaps. That's healthcare, education, tourism, everything. And so I started a Capito Connect, which really did an assessment of where we are, who offers programs. And now you see with the infrastructure bill and other issues with whether it's USDA or commerce, we're going to get there where everybody's connected, and that's what Capito Connect's all about. And I keep promising it and saying we're working, and we work hard. We get into the nitty-gritty
But
with
it's not
people.
easy. It's not
No.
easy. Christy pointed that out yesterday. You don't just say there's broadband and then there's
No.
broadband.
Oh, I thought just to connect everything, and yeah, that's true. That's hard too. But
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is when you meet somebody from an urban environment, they look like you're crazy when you say people don't have internet at their house. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. That's, it's not economical for companies to come in. That's why we're trying to give them a hand.
Right. I wish we had more time to talk
Yeah.
about this. It's always so short. Senator, I do want to thank you for taking the time to stop by today, and thank you so much for being today's The Elephant in the Room.
Well, thank you, Christy, and thank you, Cyrus, and
Thanks.
I'm happy to be the elephant in the room.
That's a wrap. I'd like to take a moment to sincerely thank everyone listening who has already liked or subscribed to our podcast. You're not only getting the benefit of being notified when we drop a new episode, but you're helping us keep these interviews going. There are lots of places you can hear your lawmakers grilled, but no other outlet is able to bring you a collection of people like this, given the time to talk so you can hear them having real conversations and judge their character for yourselves. So thank you, listeners. And please, like or subscribe if you haven't already. The Elephant in the Room is brought to you under the direction of U.S. Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming, and it takes an entire team to bring it to you, led by Arjun Modi, Carly Rapp, and Elena Seiler. Until next time, this has been The Elephant in the Room.